Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many of you here today, and thank you for joining us for this very important session. A very warm welcome to you all. This session is very generously sponsored by Casey Group, and who are, I can hand on heart say, genuinely leading the way in relation to their own commitment to building safety. So I'm Gary Townsend-Villa, and I'm the Interim Chief Executive of Building a Safer Future. And we were established to support and drive a culture change in building safety across the industry. So our charter, with its 5 commitments and the BSF Champions process that we operate, has been specifically designed to support the industry to make that step change. So building on proven models in other high hazard sectors and through independent third-party assessment and verification, we help organisations to benchmark where they are now in relation to building safety and their leadership and culture around building safety, identify where they have blind spots or gaps, and shine a light on those to help support them to develop a targeted strategic approach to continuous improvement to address those gaps. And the status of BSF Champions is a really important mark of the differentiation in the market of those organisations who have achieved that status. I'm very pleased to say that we are joined today by 2 of our esteemed champions, and you'll hear some of their learnings and experience this morning. So, without further ado, we have a stellar lineup of industry leaders and experts who are here to share their expertise with you this morning. And they will provide some challenges and insights and some sharing of best practice, which we genuinely hope will be of help and of interest to you back in the day job. And we want you to take some key takeaways from this session. So we really want to dial up the volume on leadership and culture and building safety. I know that you will have questions, and we'll make sure that we have time for you to join in and participate as part of the Q&A. But first of all, let's meet our esteemed panellists. So someone who needs little or no introduction, Dame Judith Hackett. She was chair of the Independent Review of Building Regulations and Fire Safety, and is the chair of the Industry Safety Steering Group, reporting directly into government on industry's progress in building safety. And specifically, in relation to this session, the ISG does take a very keen interest in leadership and culture change. So we're under scrutiny, all of us. An engineer by profession, Dame Judith is a former chair of the HSE and has also held a number of high-profile roles, including chair of the manufacturing trade body Make UK, formerly the REiiF, chair at Ingenuity, and a directorship at Ingeniators and HS2. She is an advisor on building standards for the UK, Australian, Victoria governments, and is also currently interim chair for the Office of Nuclear Regulation. Welcome, Judith. Next in line is Brian Knowles of Casey. He is construction manager at Casey, and he has 25 years of hands-on experience from time served as a carpenter, site manager and project manager, managing teams to ensure continuous improvement. Brian champions Casey's approach to building safety and is dedicated to showcasing their specialist experience in this high-rise fire safety projects that they undertake. And he does that at industry events and within Casey's own in-house training centre. This expertise and innovation he shares widely with internal Casey employees, external industry partners, clients and supply chain members. Welcome, Brian. Next, we have Sue Sutton, who is Chief Executive of Salix Homes. And Salix Homes owns and manages a mix of over 8,000 social homes in Salford, Greater Manchester. Having grown up in social housing herself, Sue has worked in social housing for more than 20 years. She is passionate about tackling housing stigma, social housing stigma, ensuring customers are listened to, and is wholeheartedly committed to building safety. Salix Homes has been leading the way on building safety in the sector, raising safety standards within its own properties, advising government bodies on future recommendations, and piloting and implementing the reforms of the Building Safety Act. It was also one of the first housing associations in the UK to achieve Building a Safer Future champion status. Welcome, Sue. And next we have Helen Fisher, who is Director in Building Safety at Homes England. She has over 19 years experience within the housing sector, directing all aspects of sales, development, affordable housing administration, and contract management. Helen is well versed in driving change and transformation across organisations, and she played a crucial role in numerous multi-million pound initiatives. She's devised new programmes and is leading the implementation of operational policies in line with the strategies of the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, as well as for local government. Among a list of other responsibilities and expertise, Helen leads a team of 30 personnel and is responsible for directing the delivery of the UK's grant programme for remediation of buildings above 11 metres tall, where dangerous cladding poses an unacceptable risk to life safety and where there is no alternative source of funding. Morning. Welcome, Helen. And next, Laura Hughes. Laura is the Assistant Director, Head of General Insurance, London Market of the Association of British Insurers. Laura leads the General Policy Insurance team and is responsible for leading the insurance industry's policy positions on a range of issues impacting the commercial and specialty insurance market. Laura has also led the industry's engagement since the tragic events at Grenfell Tower, influencing the government's understanding of combustible materials on buildings, fire safety issues, and is helping to shape the much-needed legislative and regulatory changes taking place. Historically, she has led some major projects for industry, as well as leading the industry's coordinated response to major incidents, including the impacts of COVID-19 and Brexit. Welcome, Laura. And last but not least, finally, Andy Wan. Andy is a director at BTP Architects, and he has been practicing as a fully qualified architect for 12 years. He's a director at BTP and specialises in new build, refurbishment and remediation of all types of housing, including high-rise buildings. Having worked with Casey on multiple registered providers of social housing on several high-rise projects, Andy has developed strong working relationships and a collaborative open book approach to ensure that schemes are delivered to the highest standards. And being very familiar with the building safety regulator processes, Andy supports clients in the successful completion of submissions of gateway applications. Welcome, Andy. So that's our panel for this morning, and moving swiftly on, I'd now like to invite Dame Judith to give us some opening remarks. Judith.
Thank you for inviting me to this event today. Very fitting, I think, that we should be here discussing this topic in Leeds, surrounded by so many high-rise buildings, many of which, having not been to Leeds for several years, I know have been built very recently. So can't help but wonder to what standards. So you know the history. You know that my independent review of building regulations and fire safety began immediately after the tragedy at Grenfell, and my final report was published exactly 6 years ago. And having come into this sector from the outside, I was shocked by what I uncovered, and I said so. In a country where we have some of the most expensive real estate in the world, our standards of workmanship and quality are poor, to say the very least. Anyone who purchases a new home these days knows, or at least expects, that their first task will be to draw up a snagging list of defects, so that at some level or another we've all become complicit in accepting the race to the bottom that was going on. My report signalled that the only acceptable response to Grenfell, to show that we had learned the hard lessons of such a terrible tragedy, was to completely overhaul the system and to make fundamental change. Change where the safety and security of residents in the properties we build and maintain would be front and centre. My personal passion for delivering this change has meant that I've stuck with it to make sure that it happens. I've chaired the transition board to set up the new regulator And also, as you've heard, I continue to chair the Industry Safety Steering Group, a panel of very senior people from many different sectors of industry who are there to challenge all parts of the built environment sector to deliver change ahead of regulation, making them do it. That means doing it for the right reasons, because you should have been doing it all the time anyway. So I'm now also involved, as you heard, in similar work to raise building standards in Australia, as well as here in the UK. But in the 6 years that the Industry Safety Steering Group has existed, we've heard from many stakeholders. In the early days, it was quite common for us to send away the people who came to see us to think again, because they clearly hadn't grasped the reality of the need for change. And most importantly, they did not understand the shift in responsibility that was taking place. At the heart of this change, and enshrined in the Building Safety Act, is a requirement for those who do the work to act responsibly and to demonstrate to the regulator and to customers that what they have designed and what they have built is safe. No more hiding behind ticking boxes to say you've complied with the rules, or feeling relieved when building control sign it off without picking up on the flaws that you or others know are there. It would be fair to say, as we speak today, that our latest report from the ISSG continues to show quite a mixed picture. There are a growing number of people who get it and want to do the right thing. But there are still far too many who are waiting to be told what to do, or who claim it's all too difficult or unaffordable. I'm delighted to be here today, I have to say, with people who are in the former camp, the ones who get it. Building a Safer Future Charter has led the way in showing what good needs to look like. And ISSG has given it our full support from the outset. To Gary and his team throughout for the tremendous work they've done in laying out what is a journey. You don't have to get there before you sign up. They are there to help you on the journey. So I find it quite hard to understand why so many continue to hold back. I don't know what you're waiting for. And I really hope that by hearing from some of those who are on this panel today and who are already on that journey, you will rethink and follow their leadership. If there's one thing I would like to see more than any other right now, it would be real market recognition and differentiation between those who are getting it right and those who are stuck in old ways. My views on the reticence of the insurance industry and the finance sector to stand up and do that are well known. It should be easy for customers, for property purchasers, lenders, finance companies and insurers to seek assurance of quality and to be able to reward and incentivize those who are doing the good practice. And in the case of buyers, shouldn't we be in a position where people can feel confident they're buying quality? The entrenched poor practices in this sector were never going to change overnight. But the tragedy of Grenfell left no doubt about the need for change. It's just worth reflecting, I think, that it is now 7 years since that awful night. So we've already had 7 years to make these changes. How much longer is this going to take? Because it's definitely not going to go away. The new regulatory framework, the new regulator are in place. So as far as I can see, your only choice is whether you're going to be smart, like some of these people on the panel today, and do it for the right reasons, or are you going to wait to be forced to do it by the regulator, which for me makes no sense at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith. Thank you. It's very clear from those really interesting and helpful opening remarks that the change required, particularly around leadership and culture, has not really gone at the pace that perhaps you were expecting or would have liked. What are the barriers, do you think, currently that exist to that progress, and what would you advise people to do?
I think the barriers are many. Certainly for the first few years, I think people were hoping that this would all go away and wouldn't happen. In fact, a number of people said that to me. We've had reviews before and nothing's ever happened, so what's going to be different this time? Well, what was different this time was that 72 people lost their lives, and we should all be ashamed about that. So I was always of the mind that this was never going to go away, but I think some people hoped it would. As I say, now I think we're up against that shift in responsibility. It's the taking responsibility and feeling ownership for getting it right, rather than simply lifting the guidance off the shelf and ticking boxes to say you've complied with all the codes. It's a very different mindset, and that's the bit that really needs debating in boardrooms, and it needs people to recognise that this is about not just leadership in engineering, but leadership in moral and ethical behaviour.
Thank you, thank you. Coming to you, Brian, just hearing those opening remarks from Dame Judith and her response there, particularly talking about boardrooms and how does Casey deal with its approach to leadership and culture, and how is that witnessed within your organisation? And do you have any metrics that you can share to help bring that to life a bit for everyone?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people here. Shows the interest and that people are concerned and want to make a difference, like we're doing at Casey. First of all, in terms of how it feels, leadership and culture, you can feel it at Casey. It's about the leadership team demonstrating a change in leadership and culture. There's no blame culture. There's a sense to do the right thing, which is one of our company values. The strapline at Casey is actually improving lives, which is Chris Casey's mantra. Chris is with us here today, our group MD. And I would thank the directors for taking on board the new regime. There's 3 directors here today. There's Chris, there's Alan, and there's Paul. And I've had their wholehearted support, if you like, to implement the new regime. And one of the things that we say at Cases is it's celebrating the reds and challenging the greens. When things inevitably don't go straight forward in business, and it's looking at the reds and opening it up, a series of questions. Why have we had problems? How do we fix those problems? What's the root cause of those problems? Coming out on the other side of it in a better place. It's leadership and culture has got to come from the top. There's no two ways about that. You can't push up with myself as the lowly construction manager managing one part of the business. To get the real change and the traction that's required, we've got to have the most senior people in organisations on board. And I would say that our leadership team went to all the initial seminars hosted by the CLC and the CIOB in London. And for want of a better word, they all got excited. They could all sense that this is what we should be doing. We want to do the right thing and we want to improve lives as Casey. When things go wrong, people have got to be encouraged to come forward. People have got to be encouraged to own situations and own problems and bring them to the table. That's something I'd say we're very good at. And we also bring the supply chain in as well. We're very passionate about spreading the word. As was touched on before, we have our own training skills academy that I'll tell you a little bit more later. And in terms of metrics, I'd say we've got the usual one-to-ones route, speaking to staff all the way through from my contracts managers all the way down to operatives on site. We have something called the Safe Sea Scanner mechanism on site, where anybody anonymously on any of our sites can scan a barcode and report any issue, or they can take a survey. We've put pulse surveys out and looked at what people think about how we're operating at Casey. I think we're about 8.9 out of 10 on the last round of surveys. You know, there's nearly 250 people work at Casey's plus the supply chain. So again, it's a fantastic result. But you know, where's the other 1.1%? That's them are the Reds. Them are the people that we want to get to, and we want to make that difference. So, yeah, from a personal point of view, I feel the culture and the leadership every day, and I think it cascades all the way down through. But if there's one takeaway from this, I would say get involved with the BSF. It's warts and all. Don't wait till you think you're ready before you get involved with the Building a Safer Future Charter, because we weren't ready. And it gives you a to-do list. It shows you the holes, and you can plug those gaps and change what you do for the better. And then it's the continual improvement. It's not about standing still. You know, things are always moving, and it's about keeping pace with that. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Brian. Sue, just picking up again on the issue of change and driving change. Resident engagement, clearly post-Grenfell, has become increasingly more important and vital. So what are Salix doing in relation to resident engagement? Because it's obviously clearly a big responsibility under the Act and under the Charter process. So, and can you share any insights that you have of the Salix experience of resident engagement?
Thanks, Gary. Morning, everyone. And it never ceases to amaze me. I'm sorry, when I hear we're still talking about doing the right thing, because it really just drives me insane. Sorry. So post-Grenfell, we found ourselves in a space we would never, ever want to be in again. So I'm going to start by saying what bad resident customer engagement looks like, if you don't mind. So we to our dismay, found we had some really poorly performing buildings post-Grenfell. We had 9, we've got 20 high-rise buildings, but we had 9 that had failed cladding on them. 2, which is where Brian and his lot come into it, and we'll probably talk about that later as well. 2 of our blocks were fully cladded, 100%, apart from the balconies. And we thought they just had failed panels, combustible cladding, ACM. We took the panels off and thought we were just going to replace them with a safe panel. What we found behind the panel was nothing short of disgusting, horrific. Brian will tell you what we found. And it was all down to poor workmanship. These blocks had only been refurbed 5 years before we were taking all of that stuff off. We had to go back to the brick. It was absolutely appalling. But and I'll get to customer engagement. So what was really disappointing, and you know, I can say I wasn't there at the time, but it didn't matter. It was still my organisation. Is the people who lived in those blocks reported the poor workmanship, and nobody listened. Obviously nobody listened. We had holes filled with plastic bags. We had everything was put on the wrong way around, back to front, upside down. The panels that were on shouldn't have been the panels. Someone had swapped them out. No one knew who made the decision, but the customers were telling us all of this. And that was probably the most disappointing part, I think. So in terms of what does good, and I'm not sitting here today saying that we're good at customer engagement. We do our best. We're all, and I would say, you know, we are still on a building safety journey. I think, you know, our journey's been eventful. I would never say you get to the end of it, but I still cannot understand why people are waiting for just do the right thing, and the right thing, if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't. How we've changed now, in terms of customer engagement, and again, you know, Brian will bear witness to this with his team, we involve them at every step of the way, in whatever way they want to be involved. So not everyone wants to come to your head office for a meeting and sit round a table. So we do lots of knocking on our doors in our high-rise now, regularly. We don't just do it as a one-off. We've got dedicated officers who work on our high-rise teams. Customers know who they are. We've just recently involved customers in all of our building safety customer engagement strategies for our building safety cases. I heard someone talking about safety cases outside. We've just published all of our safety cases on our website, on our customers landing page. So whatever block you live on, you can click on, and customers told us that's what they wanted. They don't, not everyone wants things in paper form. So we engage our customers in lots of different ways. As a social housing provider, and we are regulated by the regulator for social housing, customer involvement and engagement is something that has to run through everything we do. So what does good look like? I don't know. We do it the best we can. I feel we've increased satisfaction with landlord listening and taking views into account by 9% in a year. So I think we're probably on the way to doing something really good. But again, I think I would just urge and say, if anyone's waiting to do the right thing or waiting to be told, then I'd say, please stop. This is a juggernaut that we've all been trying to turn. 7 years on, I'll leave it there. Sorry, I get a bit passionate about building safety. I do apologise.
Clearly, and thank you very much, Sue. Helen, just listening to those comments and also thinking about the role that Homes England has to play in the market, and Homes England is very much a strategic supporter of BSF and its champions process. And you actually require contractors to sign up as a registered signatory in order to be on your DPS. What more do you think Homes England could do to drive this take-up that Dame Judith's been speaking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great topic, and it's amazing to hear others talk so passionately about it in the sector. To say, I mean, I've been working in this particular area now for nearly 2 years. We launched the cladding safety scheme last year, which was the response to, there's been the Building Safety Fund around for the last 4 years. It's been horrendously slow. The market's been incredibly slow to move forward from it. And I think the role that I was incredibly focused on was starting to hardwire some of the actual process of that into a grant programme, so that we can start to look at that behaviour a little bit more data driven, and look at what the sector is doing and how we can change that dial, starting to talk about names and people and players. And the charter has been so important in that, to look at its kind of 5 key approaches and look at how do we change transparency? How do we know who's working on this, what they're doing, how they're doing it? We've hardwired a resident and leaseholder survey into everyone who will touch a grant programme now at various points through it. And it's an obligation of grant that you send that out on regular intervals throughout remediation programmes. I think we want to work with the sector far more to say, are you a champion? How do we promote the good that's out there? But I have to say that there's not been a huge amount to share in the past 12 months to 18 months, which I think goes against, there is so much more to do here. And where I see that is, we've currently got within my own programme 6,000 buildings that we're engaging with on a regular basis. The industry takes an average nearly 12 months to write back and engage with us. We have a really low level of fire risk appraisals of the external wall that are yet, we need them to be done. There is an obligation to get on and get that done. And we're not seeing that quick enough as a whole sector. Homes England is really starting to step up its support for that. So we've created a panel of 60 firms. So there isn't a shortage of fire risk engineers here to support the market. We've created that for the sector. That is there and open to them. They are all signed up to a certain set of obligations and PI to open that door to the sector to really say, come and get this done. Come and find out whether there is a problem, what the problem is, what the risk to life is, and how we look to remediate that. But I think Homes England is really committed to try and remove barriers, bureaucracy, and make sure that we can really kind of say to the sector, get this sorted, we're here to support it. But there is just so much more to do, I think, to make that a reality.
Thank you very much, Helen. Laura, coming to you, you and your organisation are the voice of the insurance sector in the UK and in the industry. Can you tell us a bit about what your members are looking for in underwriting businesses in the construction sector, and especially how that looks in relation to those organisations dealing with high-rise buildings?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. I suppose I touch on various aspects of different types of insurance across the ABI. I'll talk a bit today about professional indemnity insurance and also building insurance at the end of the process. And I think it's safe to say, Grenfell opened up everybody's eyes to some of the bad practice that was there, and that led to the insurance industry having a significant level of uncertainty about what liabilities they were sitting on, and the fact that professional indemnity insurance goes back on and covers your historic liabilities was a terrifying place for the insurance industry to be. And I think that worry around strength of enforcement, about accountability, all of those areas that Dame Judith, you picked up in your report, were areas that were coming to light for all of us, including the industry. From a professional indemnity side of things, it was already a hard market. Pre-Grenfell, you'd already had the collapse of Carillion. It was already not a appealing or an attractive market for the insurance industry to consider profitable and consider something that they wanted to expand and grow into. So that's the different environment or the difficult environment that we've all experienced, and I've got no doubt that many of you sat here today will have various gripes on the access to insurance, affordability of insurance, limits, and the restrictions that have been put on that over time. But I think we're in a place where we're starting to see that change. We're starting to see that market soften. Insurance is very cyclical in that hard and soft market, but insurers are starting to understand that they're not all bad eggs out there, and actually demonstrating that you are a good business and are a good risk for your insurer will only help them understand your business and understand that they want to be covering you and making sure that you are able to be able to do the work that we all know needs doing. So the industry is very proactive in working with their customers and understanding exactly some of the stuff you're doing to make that change or have already been doing. And some of the stuff that includes accurate record keeping, robust internal processes and protocols. Some of the stuff, Brian, you were just talking about that Casey's doing is really important to make sure your insurer really understands that you are a good risk. You have great knowledge of the materials you're using, great risk management plans, both now and also what are you going to continue to change? How are you going to continue to make sure that you are absolutely on top of that? And then there's the difficult question around actively managing your supply chain as well. So not only do you have confidence that your business is doing that, but you have confidence in the competence of that supply chain. And I think, there's obviously huge leaps forward that have been made in changes to regulations, but you can no longer sit on your laurels. Insurers aren't regulators. We're not going to sit there and enforce those regulations. They expect you to be coming forward and demonstrating that you are going over, above and beyond what is required in many circumstances. And we as an industry will continue that greater coordination with government and other stakeholders, making sure those industry standards are, also going above and beyond to make sure that that level playing field right at the bottom is really being met. And, we'll continue to have that greater engagement across your industries and through that construction life cycle as well.
Thanks very much. Andy, hi. So we now have the principal designer role clearly defined, and we have the BSI Flex, and we have the PAS 8671 on competence. How is that changing what you're doing, and what is BTP doing around competence in your organisation?
So first of all, hi everyone, good morning. As architects, our professional body, the REiiF, has actually introduced something called the Principal Designer Register. Now, within that, it's a rigorous process to get on it, which involves interviews, exams, case study projects, just to prove your competence in it. So for BTP, we are actually proudly on the register, but shockingly, there's only a handful of practices on it. I think out of the rest, there's only 25 people on it at the moment, and 4 of which is within BTP, which we're proud of. But it's shocking, like, the register's been out for a while now, and there's only 25 people out of how many architects in the country? So I think this is something now just to address and just sign up, get on it, and show competency. And this is the new way moving forward. So it's quite important to make sure that, you know, things are changing. We just have to adapt to it and move forward with it.
Thank you. Carrying on that theme then of competence, the industry clearly has struggled in some regards with grappling with the changes and the requirements around competence. Sue, what do you think is the reason for that, and what are you doing to ensure that you and your supply chains are competent to do the jobs that they're doing?
Why do I think that's? I still think it goes back to everybody is waiting to be told what to do, and you know, what is competency. So you know, yes, you have to be competent. You need to be qualified to do specific roles and jobs and stuff. But actually, for me, competence is a lot about attitude, behaviour as well. You know, in my organisation, we've got, you know, numerous people will work on our high-rise buildings, but they don't have to be someone who's qualified to do some fire risk work. Might be a caretaker, might be a housing officer. Those people are competent, and I'll go back to, if it feels wrong, if it looks wrong, it probably is. So competency, confidence, and, you know, Brian talked about before about your staff being comfortable and confident to come to you and say, there's a contractor working on my block and I don't think they're doing the right thing. That's not, you know, people are scared because they feel like they're going to get into trouble. We've tried to kind of stop that. Building safety is everyone's responsibility. So whether you're a board member, whether you're a housing officer, a caretaker, a surveyor, everyone has a role to play. For us, I would say, you know, when we appoint contractors now, we are very, very clear and very specific about what we expect in terms of building safety.
So just on that point then, Sue,
Yep.
what is it that makes Casey a supplier of choice, a contractor of choice? What sets them apart?
So I think Casey started on this journey, or we probably did we drag it on the journey with us at first, Brian, maybe. So when we talked about those 2 blocks before, Casey was our preferred partner on there, and that was because they were one of our principal contractors. But you know, they were subject, like us, to discovering just how bad the workmanship was on those blocks. And just to put it into context, we thought it was probably going to cost us 1.5 million to put it right. Probably cost us more like 5. That's how bad it was. So we made it very clear at the start of that process with Casey and Brian and his team. And, you know, we didn't have to drag. They were very much up for kind of where we were and what we were doing. But we made it very clear that how we work together for these 2 blocks would probably set the way for how we would work in the future. So we tested everything. So all the new kind of regulations, all the new regime, you know, we did everything together, whether it was our architects, whether it was supply chain. We just, and at every point of the process, we checked everything. We might have had a design and build contract, but we didn't walk away from that. We did it together, and checked everything, you know, every floor as it got the work was done, we unwrapped it and we checked it and we had it approved and everyone was comfortable with it. And it was challenging, Brian, I would say. It was. And we involved customers in all of that as well. And they were challenging, because if you lived on that block and 5 years before, you'd gone through all that upheaval of having that work done, and then someone comes back 5 years later to do it again, then you would be very angry as well. So Casey, for us, get it. They get it with us, do you know what I mean? And that's why they are a preferred contractor of choice.
Okay. And Brian, what are you doing internally in Casey to make sure that you're doing the best job that you can to ensure competence?
Okay, well, it's a common theme that runs through a lot of what we're speaking about, but what Casey's didn't do is we didn't sit and wait. I mean, we've got BSI Flex documents, we've got PAS documents, we've got the new PD competency, which is, it's been around for a while, but it's relatively new. We actively searched out what we should be doing at the time as soon as we got involved in this building safety journey. We actually started off by becoming accredited for BM Trada Q-mark schemes for fire doors and fire stopping, so we could deliver that in-house with qualified people. On a more senior level, again, I spoke about the directors before, going to some of the first conferences. That then led us down the road to get involved with the Chartered Institute of Building. So with various people that have been through the level 6 fire safety management courses now, we're rolling that down to intermediate level, site manager level, with the level 4 course as well, with the CIOB. We've engaged with NEBOSH. Off the back of everything we've done management-wise, we've actually created our own Building Safety and Skills Academy. So any of our non-accredited managers have all been through our academy and got the benefit of the knowledge from all our accredited people. That in turn has then led us to look at supply chain, and we've designed a course specifically for supply chain, getting them involved. So just a little note on that: you can't have one man stood there with a mastic gun waiting to do one piece of fire stopping as it needs doing. So we offset responsibility and train our supply chain to deliver as we want them to deliver to be compliant. Clients, again, there's a big emphasis now on making sure that clients are competent. There's legal duties under the Building Safety Act now on clients. So we're being very supportive in that vein. It's difficult for some clients with the amount of culture change going on and the new regime. So we're fully supporting that. We've designed a program and run 6 or 7 clients through that now. Just again, it's more about raising awareness and signposting where people can get the formal quals or the formal training that they need. And it all comes down, that, as Sue said, really, it's behaviours. We used to talk about SCET, skills, knowledge, education, training. We're now back to probably 20 or 30 years ago, where we're now talking about behaviours instead of training, because it all comes back to doing the right thing. That's the ultimate. And sorry, I know you probably want me off, but doing the right thing is definitely not sitting and waiting for somebody to tell you what to do.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, great, Brian. So just picking up on some of the themes that have just emerged there from those last couple of answers, it seems to be very much around how different parts of the supply and value chain are collaborating together. So Andy, in your role as principal designers, how are you seeking to work and collaborate with principal contractors, and what does good look like under the new regime for you?
Yeah, so I would say there's 3 points within a good collaborative approach. The points are really, first of all, trust. We have to trust the whole team and everyone on it, because if there's no trust in between them, the program's not going to be well, to be honest. It's like a bad relationship, so it won't be good. Secondly, it's knowledge. You have to make sure you point the right knowledgeable specialties to the job at the outset, really. So get your M&Es in line, structural engineers, and the other consultants that's needed for the task in hand. And third, the most important thing I would say is communication. Communication is key to a successful delivery of a project, because, like for instance, P2P and Casey's, we have an open book approach where we literally just call each other up, and then if we have concerns, we just raise it then. And we're here to do the same thing at the end of the day, which is to deliver a good quality scheme and project at the end of the day. So that's why I want to make sure all the quality and everything is just really, really good, essentially. So that's quite important to us. And then also that goes down to the subcontractors as well for Casey's, outside. So again, really communication is key in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Laura, I'm just interested to come back to you in the insurance point. I think there's going to be quite a few people in this room who have experienced some difficulty with PI in the past. But, you mentioned the market softening, but is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Are there new products or government initiatives or things that we can look forward to that will make access to PI a little bit more seamless?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball like anyone else. So I think there's certainly glimmers of hope and that soft market coming through. Certainly, we work very closely with the International Underwriting Association, that are an insurance association that do a bit more of the detail on developing the wording and terms and conditions that can help insurers provide cover and get more comfortable with it. We don't do that at the ABI, but there's certainly initiatives. We work very closely with the RUA on things like that to help them create or help insurers create that environment where they'll want to take on that risk and feel more comfortable with it. And there's certainly, on PI specifically, been a really big push to make sure the insurance industry is understanding all of the change and steps that are being made moving forward from, the detail of the Building Safety Act, the Building Safety Regulator, and there's certainly a sense of optimism in the market should continue to shift in the right direction. And as I said in my first answer, it's about people developing or being able to demonstrate they are a good risk to their insurer, and their insurer will therefore be more comfortable and offer you a premium that's reflecting that better risk or perceived better risk, and work with you on that. So it shouldn't be a one-step conversation. It should be a continuous conversation of this is how we're improving, and speaking to your insurer about what they want you to do as well. Another sort of slightly different but related initiative that the ABI has just launched, and I've personally been working on this for a number of years, is actually more specific around the helping leaseholders who are living in these buildings who, through absolutely no fault of their own, are experiencing, potentially costs around remediation, but they've also got extremely high insurance premiums, and that's because insurers perceive that risk to be incredibly high and can no longer rely on that compartmentalisation being just, the one flat and affected by fire with the flats either side of it also impacted. They have to assume that whole building is going to have significant damage, and there's certainly a lot of steps that we've taken to try and help that. We've just launched this facility that essentially helps reinsurers provide the capacity to the insurers that insure most of these buildings to no longer, be not have sufficient capacity to insure 100% of that building. So we've had them sort of insuring 20% and another. When we talk, my title's London market, that doesn't mean I focus on London. It means London market. The global reinsurance industry is very focused in London. So it's about having that global picture and getting those reinsurers, providing the capacity to insurers to provide 100% of that insurance. We know that that project is going to be helpful. We asked government help and they said, no, go and do it yourselves, insurance industry. So this is the absolute best that we have come up with, and it's been years in the making. We know it's not going to help everyone. It's not going to help everyone equally, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, and we're really proud of the help that's going to have for leaseholders.
Thank you. Before I come to the audience, just for a moment, for some Q&A. So do have your questions ready. Please, when you want to speak, please put up your hand, introduce yourself, where you're from, and then ask your question. We prefer nice long statements of intent before you then come to your question. So please keep it sharp and focused. We would appreciate that because time is tight. Just one very last quick contribution from the panel. Helen, Homes England produced its new 5-year strategy earlier this year, and I'm just wondering, what are the main takeouts from that in terms of how Homes England can help drive the change that we've been discussing today around building safety?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we launched our strategy at this event last year. And I think since then, we've got dual hats on with this, I think. And I have a very distinct interest in more of the kind of remediation programs and making sure those are running well and, at a pace that we think is acceptable. And I think we've approached that as an agency to try and hardwire, as I think I said previously, the code and, kind of make sure that we start to take some of that really seriously. As a broader agency, we have a real big role in the wider industry to make sure that we're driving some of that cultural space in its broadest place, in our land business, in our kind of investment and wider grant programs as well. But also we've got a summer learning program, and kind of the program that we've got running over the summer periods over the next few months is very focused on the new building safety regulator and how industry, what the requirements are, what needs to be done, and Homes England takes that quite seriously in helping to kind of almost help people to understand that better. And that's a big role of the agency, and that's something that we want to really kind of move into. We were with delegates from Australia on Monday, and we were walking them around sites in London and trying to glean kind of experience from that and sharing those things across. And we have a great team in Homes England under our technical services team who are really starting to kind of look at what is the DAL and what are the things that people are struggling with, and how can we work on that further, and how can we really start to champion the champion role and make that something that is more of a default and just a thought process within organisations. But I think our summer learning programme, we're really going to be expanding how you comply with the building safety regulator and use the code and culture across the piece.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, handing over to you guys. Any questions for the panel? Any observations? Yes, sir, you were first.
Can you hear me? Yeah, Joe Webb from Station South. I've been 25 years in the industry, so it's not a question on relation to Station South. I've attended a number of workshops here on the challenges of delivering housing. And not one of them, I haven't attended them all, but not one of them mentioned the Building Safety Act. And they're talking about new build and refurbs and more developers coming to the market. And maybe it's a stupid question, but I don't care because I'm old enough to ask a stupid question. How big is this problem in terms of, because surely if loads of people are stuck in houses or apartments that they can't move on, or we don't know how many there are, that's affecting the liquidity in the market. And I keep on asking this question, and we have workshops across there, and they haven't even mentioned it. And I'm thinking, let's get developers to develop more. Well, surely they've got to put money to pay for this in the pledge. So that's going to affect how much they spend going forward. So I'd like to know the panel to share that. And secondly, I won't waffle on, but I'm going to get it in anyway. A friend of mine is an architect, and I sat in his office the other day, and they were going for a scheme like this. And there was a client procuring this on a single stage basis. I'm not going to give you a degree in procurement. And I nearly fell off my seat because single stage procurement repeats the problems that got us into the mess in the first place. And I believe it's going on. I seriously nearly fell off my seat, and I goes, what's this allowed to happen? Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. Judith, would you like to come in first on that?
Yes. Your question about how big is the problem is very relevant and very pertinent. Immediately after Grenfell, we had no idea. Absolutely no idea. We didn't even know how many high-rise buildings we had, let alone how they were built. That was the state of the dearth of information that we had. We've moved a long way from there. We think the number of buildings that we need to be worried about is of the order of thousands now. But even so, we're still a long way because of the slow pace at which we're looking behind the cladding or whatever. We're still not there. But the focus is all on high-rise buildings. Here's the rub, though. How do we know we're not building crap today? We don't. So we have an opportunity to draw a line in the sand and say, that problem is in the past and we need to fix it, but everything we build from here on is going to be to a different standard. We're not even doing that yet. That's the bit we need to focus on. So, you know, let's climb back up off that floor to a higher place in terms of new build, and then at least we've capped the liability. We're not even doing that yet.
I can see a couple of... thank you, Judith. Helen, did you want to come in briefly?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're living and breathing how big the problem. In government, we call it prevalence. So I think where we've got, I mean, there's a lot of work going on to establish this. I mean, there's 70 to 80,000 11-metre plus buildings in England, of which we think 10% potentially have a problem of dangerous cladding. So we're 7 years on and only just touching the point. And I think it's really important, though, that that's fixing a problem. And I think through the building safety funds and the previous programmes, we focus on an external wall system and we focus on taking that off, and actually the horrors that lie behind that are the things that we actually need to be looking at, the much broader cultural piece of how we build buildings here. And I think finally there's a bit of, I go around a lot of these buildings and actually you see an awful lot of behaviour that you would have expected would be just not there anymore. Do you know, kind of standing under flammable material, having a cigarette, do you know, is something we saw on Grenfell, something I see around buildings in London for project teams that are working on remediation. If you lived in these buildings, I'm not sure you'd welcome that from one of your contractors. And I think there is just a huge amount still to do on understanding the obligations here to the people who live in some of these buildings and building things better.
Thanks a lot, Helen. Brian, do you want to come in briefly?
Yeah, just briefly in
in
regards to the single stage tendering on remediation schemes. Obviously, again, that's not doing the right thing. You know, there's procurement guidance now in relation to the BSA. At very least, it's got to be 2-stage, and we all know what happens if we go for a full D&B approach, where people are ultimately it will turn into a race to the bottom. At Casey, we're very selective about, for one, who we will work for two, what forms of contracts that we will actually take on. And we'll vet the client as much as the client will vet us, because we won't deliver under stress, under pressure, cost cutting, corner cutting. It's just the more main contractors or principal contractors that take that stance, clients are going to have to change. Simple as that.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Time for another question?
Hi, sorry, my name's Matt from Hydrock in the fire division. My question's really to Brian and Sue around, we spoke a lot around competency. One of the things obviously you spoke about was for workmanship. You know, you open it's like Pandora's box, you take off an external wall and it's a problem after problem after problem. How are you in terms of, and that relates back to a skills gap essentially of labour involved putting the buildings together. How are you, sort of two-part question, how are you addressing the skills gap personally within your sort of organisation, and also what do you think that we as an industry should be doing to further upskill essentially the labour workforce who are actually putting the buildings together?
Thank you. Sue, shall we come to you first? Or no, Brian, you've got the mic.
Okay, so at Cases we're actively involved at the most junior levels in terms of developing new talent, getting involved in school programs. There was a lot of talk in a seminar I was at yesterday about skills gaps, because again, there's building safety, there's retrofit, there's the whole construction industry. Basically, we're all getting older, and there's not enough people that are coming in at the bottom. It's not seen as the right way to go in primary schools. It's not really talked about. Senior schools, again, we were talking about getting involved with people, young guns, before they actually get to junior school, because secondary school, because they've formed their opinions by that point, and it's very difficult to change them. But more specifics, we've got the training academy where we're upskilling people who necessarily haven't done fire stopping before. That's one thing. We've got Jared with us today, who's one of our construction apprentices. Jared's just embarking on a trainee program to become a site manager ultimately. You've just got to look internally. The government are not going to fix it. That's blatant. You know, there's never going to be a massive pot and a big magic wand where the government solve your problems. So you've got to look inwardly, and you've got to come up with your own plan and your succession programs of how you're going to look after your business going forward.
And similar, I would say. I think the skill gap, shortage, call it what you will, is a massive problem. And I think if we don't all collectively work together, and you know, Brian might be right, government aren't going to fix it, but who knows on the 4th of July? I have no idea. So I think collectively as an industry, I think we need to do something. And I think training people from a younger age, we can all put our own staff through our qualification, but that's not going to solve the shortage across the industry. So for me, I think it's a collective, and we all need to look at it, and whether you're a housing provider, a developer, we all have to work together. I need to know that, you know, Casey and Brian's team are going to do the right thing. I know that, but I couldn't say that for every contractor that I work with. So this for me is the next, well, you know, we've talked about not waiting. This is definitely one, I think, because we are all getting older. So
thanks, Sue, for reminding us. Okay, so as ever in these sessions, we do run out of time, but I want to just, before I thank our panellists, I just want to hand over for some last thoughts to James Judith, picking up on anything you've just heard.
Thanks, Gary. On the last point, I just want to say, you know, you heard at the start of this that I've worked in lots of industries during my career. You know, I worked in the chemical industry, I've worked in infrastructure in the rail sector, on HS2, nuclear industry now. Every other industry sector explicitly recognises the importance of supervision, first line supervision on the job. And I just don't think it gets talked about enough in this sector. If you want to get a good job done, then not only do you need to have competent people, but you need to have good supervisors who are watching and who are stopping the not good enough and putting it right. And I just think there is more that we should be exploring about. If it's so important in every other sector to have good first-line supervisors, what makes you think you're so different? I don't think you are, and maybe we're not talking about that enough.
Well, that's an excellent point on which to finish. I can see lots of nodding heads around the room. In concluding then, I just want to say a personal thanks to the Casey team, particularly to Sandra Goff and to Liz Everett and obviously Brian, and the incredible Paul Taylor. And a special thanks also to Chris Casey, who is actually the very epitome of authentic leadership. So congratulations on Casey's progress through the Champions process and all that you're doing to lead the industry in this regard. So thank you to all of you. And the final thing, and the very pleasurable last duty that I have, is to thank you for coming, attending, and contributing. And I hope you've enjoyed the discussions today. But most importantly, and last but not least, our incredible panel. Thank you so much for everything today.